Anna Perez, 22 years old, works at a bar. She went missing after her shift. No friends, no family came forward to report it. She's the fourth victim in the past 3 months. All the victims are women working in the red light district. All of them disappeared mysteriously, with no witnesses or useful evidence to go on.
Hey, Gabby. I bought you some of those famous tacos from the stand outside headquarters. You're thinking about those missing person cases again, aren't you?
Yes, I am. I keep feeling like there's some connection between the cases.
There's nothing to it. The security in that area is a mess. Girls working in that district, how many of them live clean lives? Who's to say they didn't borrow money from some gang and run away? Sometimes you have to ignore the things you see. If you get too deep into it, the one who ends up hurt will be you.
I understand. Thanks, Joel. I'm Gabby, a police officer. I can't turn a blind eye to the crimes happening in my jurisdiction, especially when the victims are nothing but vulnerable young women. I returned home and quickly summarized the witness statements I had collected.
Spit out the piece of meat you swallowed from me! Hurry!
Why on earth would I have such a bizarre dream? What on earth is the hidden truth behind all of this? Exactly 7 days later, I received another report of a missing person. This time, once again, it was a young woman named Sue, another worker from the red light district. I opened the window to get some fresh air. I noticed the taco truck had reopened today. Thinking back, these mysterious disappearances always happened just a few days before the taco truck resumed business. The string of coincidences made me suspicious. I decided to investigate. I'll take 1 taco, please.
You're lucky. That's the last one I have.
Is it because you only open on certain days each month that your tacos are so sought after?
Exactly. My truck only opens on special religious holidays for the caster faith. Days for sharing love. Oh, nothing too unusual.
Thank you. The caster faith? Seems like she let something slip there.
Enjoy your meal.
Back at the office, I immediately started investigating the caster faith that Amila had mentioned. It was an ancient sect of the indigenous people, riddled with strange and barbaric practices like many other cults. But what caught my attention was the history of caster followers being arrested for performing human sacrifice rituals and consuming the victims as a way to absolve their own sins. A chilling sensation ran down my spine. Could the taco I ate really be normal? Unable to suppress my unease, I began searching through the filling for anything unusual. After sifting through the pieces of slightly dark-colored meat, a corner of a black dahlia tattoo emerged before my eyes. It was an exact match to the tattoo on the body of the most recent victim. This taco was made from human flesh. The truth was beginning to unfold, but to secure a warrant for Amila's arrest, I needed DNA confirmation from both the victim and the meat sample. Just then, a bank officer called to inform me that someone had used Anna's credit card. Extract all CCTV footage from the area and send me an image of the suspect as quickly as possible.
What's going on, Gabby?
I have a breakthrough in my case. I have to go now. Joel, help me get this meat sample and Sue's hair sample tested. Even if we don't have a solid conclusion yet, I'm sure Amila is connected to this case. Instead of waiting for a search warrant, I decided to break into her house to look for direct evidence. With some luck, I might even save her next victim. I searched every corner of the kitchen, but there was nothing suspicious. The entire space was spotless, as if it had just been thoroughly cleaned. Or perhaps this wasn't where she made the human meat tacos. As I was thinking, a message from the bank officer came through. To my surprise, the person using Anna's credit card was a man. Could it be that I have made a mistake, Impossible. Surely in this human taco case, Amila has an accomplice.
Looks like it's time to catch the nasty little mouse.
Amila, how did she come back so soon?
I hadn't seen Grandma in 3 years. After the divorce, Mum and I moved across the country, and we couldn't afford to visit. Or maybe Mum just didn't want to. But when her new boyfriend gave her tickets to Costa Rica, she suddenly thought it was a great idea for me to spend a week with Grandma.
Come on, Ava, Grandma's great. She'll teach you how to knit and bake cookies.
As I arrived at Grandma's house, something felt off. She looked the same, white hair, blue eyes, but she seemed distant, almost cold.
"Hello, my dear,"
she said, smiling in a way that didn't quite reach her eyes. The first few days were okay. We baked cookies and talked, but there were moments when Grandma acted strangely. She forgot my name once, calling me every name she could think of. What was even stranger was when Grandma warned me not to go into the basement, giving only a brief explanation.
"It's dangerous. If you go down there, I'll punish you in the most painful way."
I swallowed hard and nodded, unsure of what to say. Then she smiled and said she was just joking, but the way she laughed sent chills down my spine. I forced a smile, but I couldn't hide the disappointment. That basement had once been a treasure trove of memories. But I told myself it was for my safety and tried to push the thought aside. That night, I woke up with a dry throat and went to the kitchen for a glass of water. As I passed through the dimly lit hallway, I saw her, Grandma, sitting in her old armchair in the living room. She wasn't knitting or reading like she usually did. Instead, she was completely still, her body rigid, eyes locked on me. Her eyes flicked toward me, but they weren't the warm eyes I remembered. They darted back and forth, unnervingly fast, as if they were searching for something, or someone. My heart pounded in my chest as I backed away. She didn't respond, didn't move, just kept staring with those wild, rolling eyes. I turned and bolted back to my room, slamming the door behind me, trying to shake the image from my mind. The next morning, I cautiously asked her about it. "Grandma, were you up last night? You were staring at me." She looked at me, puzzled.
"I don't remember that, dear. Must have been sleepwalking or something."
But there was a heaviness in her voice that didn't sit right with me. Her tone was deeper than usual, and her movements seemed sluggish, almost disjointed. All day, I watched her closely. She walked with a strange, uneven gait, and her speech was off, like it took extra effort to form words. Something was terribly wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. That night, as she slept, I heard something, faint, muffled cries. I followed the strange sound out of the room and down the hallway. They were coming from the basement. I froze, listening intently, and my blood ran cold when I recognized the voice. It was Grandma's voice, but it was pleading, desperate. Without thinking, I grabbed the old key hanging by the kitchen door and crept down to the basement. The stairs creaked under my weight and the air grew colder with each step. When I reached the bottom, I could barely breathe. There, on an old surgical table, was my grandmother, my real grandmother. Her head was bandaged, but I could see where the scalp had been crudely cut, revealing bone beneath. Her eyes were missing, just empty sockets staring up at the ceiling. Tears streamed down her face as she whimpered.
"Ava, don't! It's not me. Up there, it's not me."
"Grandma!" I rushed to her side, fumbling with the chains that bound her to the table. "I'll get you out of here, I promise." But as I struggled with the lock, I heard the basement door creak open behind me. I turned slowly, my blood turning to ice as I saw the other grandma. No, the thing pretending to be her, standing at the top of the stairs. Its eyes, no longer darting, were fixed on me with a cold, furious stare.
Oh, Ava, you shouldn't have come down here.
It said, its voice hollow and echoing in the small space.
Now you know too much.
I backed away, my hands shaking. What the hell are you?
I am what you see. I take what is mine. Memories, life, identity. But this body and this mind is too weak. I want yours.
In a flash, the thing leaped off the stairs and was on me before I could react, its hands like icy claws gripping my arms with inhuman strength. I screamed, but it was drowned out by the creature's growl, a deep sound that sent a jolt of terror through my entire body. My head hit the cold stone, and for a moment, the world spun, dark spots dancing in my vision. I struggled against its grip, but it was too strong, its fingers digging painfully into my skin. Its face inches from mine, so close I could feel its icy breath against my cheek.
But now, you'll end up just like her, a hollow shell.
The creature's other hand moved to my face, and I felt its cold fingers brush against my temple. The touch sent a shockwave of pain through my skull, like needles being driven into my brain. I cried out, thrashing against its hold, but it only tightened its grip. "Stop! Please! Don't do this!" But the creature only smiled wider, its teeth unnervingly sharp, almost predatory.
You're mine now, Ava. And when I'm done, no one will ever know you existed.
I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, but no matter how much I shifted under the covers, sleep wouldn't come. I sighed, deciding that a glass of water might help calm my restless mind. The kitchen was pitch dark, with just a sliver of light filtering in through the glass door facing the garden. I reached for a glass of water, but strangely, I couldn't grasp the glass in front of me. Maybe I was just dizzy, or perhaps it was because my foster mother had cooked me an incredibly delicious and hearty meal last night. But then something outside caught my attention. There, in the garden under the pale moonlight, was someone. A figure dressed in strange, flowing clothes, their movements slow and deliberate. It took me a moment to realize they were dancing. A stranger was dancing in my garden. I blinked, trying to make sense of the scene. The figure's arms moved gracefully, their feet sliding silently across the grass. It was almost hypnotic, the way they danced. But the sight filled me with unease. Why would someone be dancing in my yard in the middle of the night? I walked to the window for a closer look. I couldn't make out if it was a man or a woman, just that the person seemed completely absorbed in their strange, ritualistic movements. Something inside me pushed me to step outside against my better judgment. Maybe it was the sheer weirdness of the situation. Maybe it was a gut instinct to confront the intruder. But I found myself stepping out into the cold night air. As I moved closer, what I saw next froze me in my tracks. My parents. They were there too, kneeling on the ground, facing the dancer. Their heads were bowed, and they were murmuring something in unison, a language I didn't recognize. The words were soft, foreign and unsettling, like a chant or prayer from some ancient ritual. "Mom? Dad!" I called out, my voice trembling. But they didn't respond. They didn't even flinch. They just continued bowing over and over, their hands clasped in front of them, like they were paying reverence to the dancing figure. My stomach twisted. I had never known them to be superstitious. Sure, they asked strange questions when they adopted me 3 months ago, about my birth date, my bloodline, even the specific time and place I was born, but I brushed it off as cultural quirks. Now though, seeing them like this, I realized how deeply rooted their beliefs were. I called out again, louder this time. "Mom! Dad! What are you doing?" Still no response. They kept chanting, their voices rising and falling with the rhythm of the dancers' movements. I started to panic, rushing forward to shake them out of whatever trance they were in, but something stopped me. I felt a force, cold, invisible, pulling me toward the center of the garden. It wasn't my own will driving me anymore. It was as if I was being drawn in, as if something was tugging at my very soul. My feet moved on their own, bringing me closer to the figure and my parents. The chanting grew louder, the air thicker with each step I took. And then I saw it. There, on the ground, was a body. A familiar body. It was me. I stumbled backward, the world spinning around me. My own face, pale and lifeless, stared back up at me from the cold earth. The lifeless body lay still, its eyes closed, its skin ashen under the moonlight. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. How could this be? I looked down at my hands, expecting to see flesh, but they were fading, translucent. My heart raced, and I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I was dead. No, it couldn't be. I was standing here. I was alive. Wasn't I? I reached out, but my hand passed through the grass, the earth, even my own body. The horrifying truth dawned on me. I had been dead all along. This was my corpse, and I wasn't supposed to be here. The figure stopped dancing and turned toward me. Behind the figure, I saw someone I didn't recognize. A young man, his eyes deep and sorrowful. He smiled, a sad, bittersweet smile, as if he knew exactly what had happened. And then it hit me. This wasn't just a seance. It was a ritual to bring him back. My foster parents had been performing a ceremony to call their lost child back from the dead. They had used me, my body, my soul, as the vessel, the man, Min. He stepped forward, his presence gentle but undeniable. I could feel his spirit pushing mine aside. I couldn't fight it. I didn't even want to. In that moment, I understood. My parents hadn't wanted me for who I was. They wanted me to bring their real child back, the one they had lost long ago. I had been nothing more than a temporary shell, a means to an end. As my soul began to fade, I felt an odd sense of peace. This was why I had been brought here. This was why they had adopted me. It was all to reunite with the child they truly loved. I looked at Min, standing over my body, ready to step into the life I had unknowingly borrowed. I wasn't angry. I wasn't afraid. I was just grateful. "Thank you," I whispered to my parents, even though I knew they couldn't hear me. They had taken care of me in their own strange way. And now, I was giving them the chance to be whole again,